Hi there, I'm Daniel Weyman and I'm the narrator of the Peter James Roy Grace series. The thing I enjoy most about reading audiobooks is being able to immerse yourself in the world that's created by the author. And I think over the course of a number of days sitting in a sort of airtight, dark box, I use earphones so I can really hear the story coming back into my head, and that just gives me the chance to create the world, see the characters really vividly, and then the story begins to sort of tell itself, and at that point it's like you're experiencing it sort of in film inside your own head, and I find that really thrilling. So I prepare quite hard for each recording session. I really like to get the book quite early, a few weeks, if not like a month before I start having to read it, because I want to go through it and prep by reading the whole book, knowing what the story is, knowing where the drama points are, knowing where the pace might change, what the characters' key objectives are. And you can only really pick that up from having got to the end. You know, you're sort of always fearful if you don't read a book that in the last 3 pages you're going to find out that the main character who you've been voicing from Belfast is actually from Edinburgh, and that's never great. So reading it through, and then there's always, I don't know how many books I seem to read, I still find that there are words that I don't know the meaning of, so I go to dictionaries quite a lot and have to look up words and understand how to pronounce them properly. And then obviously there's a massive amount of work around characters and how to differentiate characters, both throughout the whole book and individually, you know, within, say, in the Roy Grace books, within a team of police officers. How are we going to set up these different characters who all have quite different lives? Then I had to record myself a sample of each of those voices, so that when I come to recording in the studio, I have a chance to always be consistent. Finally, once I've sort of done all that, I'll talk to a producer, normally either a producer or an author, about the kind of way they see the book, and just to check that I'm on the right line, because there's nothing worse than starting a recording and the producer or the author, if they're in, sort of saying, hang on a second, this isn't all right, I see this character slightly differently. So trying to do all that before you get in the studio makes me a lot less anxious, and then I can sort of get into that zone that I talked about, you know, of immersion. It's funny because with the Roy Grace series, there are a lot of characters who appear throughout the series, so you get to know them quite well. And as they come up, you sort of miss them if they're not in a book. And you sort of, when you start to see their name cropping up, you can be. It's quite exciting, I find. You know, oh, what's this character going to do? One of those characters is Cassian Pugh, who's Roy Grace's boss, or certainly was when I took over the series, and he's a nasty piece of work in many aspects, and Peter has really clearly defined his voice. He talks about like mannerisms, and there's a whine to it, and also the sort of pace and the attack of his speech when he talks to Roy, especially. And so voicing him has always been quite fun, because it's just so horrible, and you can, you know, it's not often in life you can get the chance of letting those sort of demons out through your own voice. So I enjoy him, and I mean, Roy's sort of the hero of all the stories, so it's always quite pleasing to be with him. He's reassuring, he's pretty unflappable, he is heroic, but he's also, and I think Peter does this brilliantly, he changes over the course of the books that I've read. He's changed as a human being. You know, he's learned things, he's adapted to new challenges, he's taken on different roles, and so keeping up with that is quite fun. And then there are other characters who, you know, there are different accents, so Peter might put in that a character is from a particular part of the United Kingdom, or there are international characters, and finding voices for them, you know, is both a challenge and a rewarding thing if you can pull it off, and hopefully, you know, with the prep work I do, but I suppose that's up to you as the listeners to work out. One of the flip sides of having lots of voices in a book and having the enjoyment of finding these new voices is that if you're doing a series, you need to be able to keep them consistent. You need to be able to come back to that voice and allow the audience to re-find that character straight away. And so there's a little bit of work that goes into that, and normally I record the voices early, so I record it in prep, but then I will use that voice when I'm recording. Sometimes I might feel that I'm going a bit off track, and we'll take it back a paragraph and have another listen and come back in. But sometimes I might be voicing a brand new character who's just come into the books. As happened with a recent book, I was voicing a new, very senior police officer who is a character called Hannah Robinson, who's the new ACC, and she had quite a distinctively different take on lots of things around the office and around the police force, and so I wanted to get that in her voice, and I found that, you know, as the chapters went by, if another chapter had been away from her storyline, then when I came back to it, I really wanted to listen to her voice again, because it keyed me into her character. And then when she was talking to Roy, I felt that I got that relationship right. Other characters who might have been in for a long time, Cleo, who's Roy's wife, she comes quite naturally because I know her quite well. Or Norman Potting is another good example where I feel I can just launch straight into the voice. So it's important for me to have those reference points and to go back to them, and that allows me to feel confident that I'm giving the audience, the listening audience, the consistency, and that they can let the story wash over them without suddenly thinking, hang on a second, who's this we're coming to? So, yeah. Another thing that's really helpful, that Macmillan do really well with this series, is they hold a handbook, a Roy Grace Handbook, that includes reference to every character who's ever turned up in all of the books, and the descriptions that Peter uses about those characters. So if I've had a character that might have been in a book 5 books ago and then absent and then comes back, I can go back to both the voice that I might have on file, but also that handbook, and see all the different sort of textual references to their character, how tall they are, what they like doing in their spare time, and all of those sort of things give me a sense of that character walking around the real world, and that helps me to, again, another way of helping me to key in to their voice, and hopefully finding a natural voice for you all to listen to when it comes to that part of the book. So reading Picture You Dead was really enjoyable. It was a page turner, it was enthralling, and I got lured into this world that Peter had created, which had a dark underbelly to the art world, where counterfeits, forgeries, art crime were rife, and the way that these things were escalating, the money involved, the threat to life that was involved, were utterly compelling. I couldn't put it down, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. Picture You Dead is the 18th of the Roy Grace novels in this series, and I've really enjoyed narrating them, so much so that I have in fact cheekily taken one of the books onto a set when I was filming Silent Witness, and I read it in a scene, and the eagle-eyed will be able to spot that on reruns of this particular episode. I was reading Dead at First Sight, and as I say, I've really enjoyed narrating them, and I hope that you will enjoy listening to them. There are lots to discover, so I think get listening.